My final Nordic country's history, Finland. Not much is known about Finland's early history, but the oldest records suggest that Finland was consistently raided by their Viking neighbours to the west from about the middle of the 8th century to the mid 11th century. During this time, many Finns served as mercenaries for the Viking armies. By the end of this age, the Swedes arrived and forcibly began Christianising the locals. By about 1350, most of Finland became Swedish due to more and more crusades. Throughout the next few decades, the Swedes would continuously drag the Finns into many different wars against mainly the Russians, the Poles, or the Danes. This devastated the country, and so Finns did constantly rebel during this time. One of these later wars was the Great Northern War. This war pitted the Swedes and the Russians against each other and led with a Swedish defeat. Towards the end of the 18th century, Finns would begin to desire independence. During this time, the Napoleonic Wars began in Europe. The Swedes quickly brought the Finns into the war against France. This led to massive problems for Sweden, as eventually Russia allied itself with France, and so Sweden fought Russia, and after losing the war, Sweden was forced to cede Finland to Russia, giving it autonomy. Throughout the next few decades, Finland would enjoy a great level of autonomy from Russia, but slowly the Russians began introducing reforms designed to Russify Finland. This obviously angered the Finns and only intensified their calls for independence. Luckily for them, the First World War broke out, which began in 1914. The Russians' war against the Central Powers was catastrophic for the country, and by 1917 the country wanted out of the World War. In Finland, rising calls for independence finally were satisfied when on December 6, 1917, the country finally declared their independence from Russia, which had by now descended into all-out civil war, and so therefore could not really do anything about it. However, Finland would not see peace. Just a little while later, in 1918, the Finnish Civil War broke out. This was between the Red Communists, who held the most important cities of Helsinki, Turku and Oulu in the north, whilst the Whites, the anti-communists, had the rural areas and had the most international support, mainly from the German Empire and Swedish and Estonian volunteers. The war eventually resulted in a White victory and put an end to the possibility of a communist Finland. At least that is what everybody thought. During this time, people thought about having a monarch from Germany to rule the Finnish people. However, then Germany lost World War I, and so they just opted for a republic. During this time also, Finland also sent volunteers to fight for Estonia's independence as well. The 1920s and 1930s saw growing economic prosperity and peace for Finland. Until 1939. With the Second World War starting, Finland sought to see out the conflict as just a neutral country, but the Soviet Union felt threatened by how close the Finnish border was to Leningrad, or modern-day St. Petersburg, and so after brief negotiations, in which both countries failed to reach an agreement, the Soviet Union bombed Helsinki and declared war on Finland, igniting the Winter War. The Winter War was a victory for the Soviet Union, but yet at the same time it was technically a loss. Finland lost 11% of its territory after the Winter War, but yet still managed to remain independent despite Soviet leader Joseph Stalin believing the Finns would probably lose the war within 3 weeks. In June 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union and Finland joined in. Unlike Germany or the other Axis powers, Finland did not really wish to expand and never officially join the Axis powers. It just really wanted to gain its territory back from the Soviets in the war before. At first it was successful, but by 1944 the country was desperate to end the war. It finally signed a peace treaty ending its participation in the conflict and forcing it to go to war against its former friend Germany. This started the Lapland War. The Lapland War was fought in northern Finland and ended with all German troops driven out of Finland by late April 1945. With World War II over, Finland was forced to rebuild as the Germans employed a scorched earth strategy, burning lots of northern Finland. During the Cold War, Finland opted for a neutral stance, however it was forced to not accept the martial aid that it desperately needed to rebuild the country. The Cold War then ended in 1991, and in the same year, Finland asked to join the European Union along with Sweden and Austria, which it officially joined in 1995. In 1999, the country switched its currency from the Finnish mark to the euro. This was one of the main reasons why the Finnish tourism industry has boomed. Today, Finland is one of the most beautiful, happiest and developed countries and continues to have a bright future. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.